Hello everyone, welcome to an exciting new journey. The challenges that immigrants go through, no one understands them fully. I realized a little while ago that my son would never understand what we truly went through. So I want to do something to chronicle the different paths we take. We're going to be talking to different people from different cultures, and the only thing they have in common is that they've left their homelands to work in the NHS. Hi everyone, welcome to the third episode of the IMG UK podcast. I promise I am still looking for a better name for the podcast, so just bear with me. I've got Dr. Olivia Mosquito with me, who is currently a GPST working in the south of England. Olivia has done some fantastic work for IMGs. It was a difficult journey for her, as it is for many IMGs, and she's paying it forward. She's paying the debt forward. So she's created the Head Start project with some colleagues, and I think they've done around 12 webinars to help IMGs adjust to the UK, and they cover a lot of different topics. So I would highly recommend checking that out. I'll try and put a link to that in the description for this podcast when I can. And locally as well, something that I've also recently become a part of. Olivia's done a lot of work on making sure IMGs are well supported, and they have a lot of they have a network where they can connect with different IMGs from different parts of the world. So this is all very amazing, and I'm very happy to have Olivia on the podcast.
Oh, nice. I'm glad to be here and just talk about my story. I think it's important to talk about not just my story, but sort of everybody's story. And this is a great initiative. Thank you.
Good, excellent. So Olivia, I've got a standard list of questions which I ask everyone. So I'm going to kick off with the most nostalgic of the bunch, and then we'll sort of move towards the heavier stuff, as you probably know. So you're from Mumbai, yes?
Yes, I'm from Mumbai. Yeah.
Tell me about your city.
When I was growing up in Mumbai, and I had only ever lived in Mumbai, I'd never lived anywhere else. And people used to say, oh, it's a city that never sleeps, and it's a city that's always running. And I never understood what it was, because that was my normality. You wake up, you run for a rickshaw, or you run to get a cab, and then you run into getting a train, and you carry a heavy bag. That's all normal. My parents did it, I did it, my sister did it. And I thought that, this is life. This is how life is everywhere. So I didn't understand what people meant until I moved to the UK. And shops closing at 5 was not a thing for me. At 11, if you want some bread at 11, there's the local corner store grocery that's open at 11 in the night. So you can go get bread at 11. If you wanted to go watch a movie at 11, there was a show that would run from 11 to 1. So you could watch a movie if you wanted. You could do whatever at whatever time of the day. And I think it was that ease of living in Mumbai, or the ease of constantly being on the move, or being able to do anything at any point of the day without thinking. I think that is what I miss the most. And also how there's people around all the time in Mumbai. So when I went to New Zealand for a vacation, I could not believe how few people there were. And so in Mumbai, this one time, my friends and we almost missed the last train at 1 a.m. And when we got it, there was a train block. And so at 3 in the morning, we were at the train station in my suburb. And, there's 2 boys and me, and we were just like, what's the best way to get me home? And there was a group of vegetable vendors at 3 in the morning, a bunch of women at 3 in the morning walking to this, Sabzi Mandi, or to the vegetable market.
Classic, yeah.
And we were just like, fine, we just walk with them. So at 3 in the morning, then we were walking, to my home with a group of women. And this is what I love about Mumbai. There's a lot about how it's a very unsafe city. And, yes, maybe it is, but just because of how many people there have been at all times, day and night, for me, it's just been the safest experience for me, and that's a privilege, and I agree with that. But I just miss the people, and I miss the constant bustle, if that makes sense. I miss it so much.
As for the benefit of my friends who are not IMGs listening to this, as you probably will have gathered from the first 3 episodes, a lot of things that we talk about, especially as Desi people, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, even Sri Lanka, is having people around. I think that's the biggest thing about Desi families, and the food. So Sabzi mandis are legendary places, which if you haven't been to one, I'm sorry, but you need to. It's like a bucket list experience.
It's surprising, isn't it? Like here you die for like whole foods and fresh food, and you take it for granted that you will get fresh produce first thing in the morning if you wanted it, which will be sold out by midday. So you completely take it for granted. But the opportunity to eat fresh produce was a privilege, and I remember it now. Now I have to buy my stuff from the stores in plastic bags, whereas there it was fresh open on the street for me to pick up.
It's
So that
so
was great.
affordable as well, isn't it? It's so affordable, and I mean the bargaining is the best part.
It is very affordable, and you'd be surprised at how affordable you can make it if you wanted to.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned food because a big part of my life was after during my F1 or my internship. You finish shift or you're on shift on the night call, but you can always get a break between 4 and 6, and there would be this old lady who would bring us breakfast for the doctors, and that was like a great breakfast. So like sweet breakfast options and spicy breakfast options, and at 4 in the morning we were there on the street of Mumbai eating some food. And if you were feeling if you finished your duty late, you could drive off and eat kebabs if you wanted. You could eat pav bhaji if you wanted at the seafront. I mean, what city can you do that in? At 11 in the night you feel like, oh, I need some food, and then you drive off in a car to a seafront and you get like fresh food in a crowd. I mean, I think it's great. Yeah.
Sounds amazing. I'm hungry now. So, moving on to the next question. So, what brings you to the UK? Why did you decide to move?
I think that is an interesting question, clearly because I sound like I'm in love with my city, which I am. So essentially when I worked, I was working a job after my F1, and that's when I sort of decided, maybe I don't want to train in India because of how busy some of my friends who were training in India were. So you do 36-hour on calls like it's nothing. You work around the clock, and for the 3 years that you're a resident, you are a resident doctor. I mean, the hospital is your home, and I wasn't sure if that life was for me. So I started looking at moving abroad, and then I worked in a hospital where they used to follow a lot of guidelines, where they used to follow a lot of Western, I don't know how to explain, a lot of protocolized medicine, which I'm a person who likes that sort of medicine, and I thought that was for me. So which is why I thought, okay, fine, let's look at the US and let's look at the UK. And I could not deal with medicine which was capitalist, which is a bit silly to say now. Now I don't really think that way anymore. But at that point, I could not think of, asking someone, do you have insurance before I treat them? So then I was like, okay, fine, the UK it is then for me. So that's why primarily I moved. I thought of moving abroad because I liked working to guidelines rather than just plain clinical medicine. I mean, you do use guidelines in India, but I think not as much as the Western countries. But that being said, I was doing a holiday in New Zealand with a friend, and I saw people my age. They were like from all over the world, living their lives, traveling, working in different countries. And then I just thought to myself, like, what am I doing? Like, why am I signing myself off to a residency for the next 3 years? I mean, I should be able to work a job where I can see the world at least a little bit, or if not see the world, at least see people from other parts of the world. So I thought, yes, making the move was the right thing for me then.
Do you regret it? Or have you regretted it?
Do I regret? So I don't regret it. No,
I know that wasn't part of the questions. This is a curveball.
This was a curveball. Yes. No, I do not regret it. I do not regret it because I think this has offered me a better quality of life. I don't know if that's short-lived, because in India you have a really bad quality of life as a resident, but a great quality of life as an attending and a consultant. So I don't know if this is just making my problems prolonged, but bearable. But I do not regret it. But what I do regret is the quality of training or the quality of teaching that I had in India. There's a real culture around teaching. So every ward round you get taught multiple things of every patient. You have grand rounds where you get extensive teaching, and it's not the same polite teaching. Your teachers will tell you off, they'll make you stand outside the ward if you if you do things wrong, that sort of petty things. But I think it really taught me so much, and it just gave me so much knowledge. So I do miss that about training in India, just the thoroughness of it all. If you haven't thought of a very vague thing that can happen in with this presentation, it's not good enough for your senior. And I think, they will still treat it like the most common presentation, but they really like to jog your brains, and I really do miss that about India. That's thorough. I'm not saying the UK is not thorough; it is thorough, but I think the culture of teaching is stronger back home. Surely, I would say that.
I think you're also talking about the reliance on clinical examination, which is obviously a big difference. I think partly, obviously, things have changed because of litigation and CT scans. I'm not meaning to offend anyone here, but there's a very common joke that the surgeon's examination is a CT scan, isn't it? No, I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm just joking. I'm just kidding. I love surgeons. My mom's a surgeon.
I remember ward rounds, in India, like when I used to work on a pediatric unit. So you have 3 years, and my 3 years were growth clinic. 3 year each of 1 month. So my first month was a growth clinic. My second month was a cardiac unit, and my third month was what was it? I think it was neurology. But my second month, which is my third month was hematology. My second month, which is a cardiac one, I heard so many murmurs day in and day out that the other day I was doing a baby check, and I heard this murmur, and I'm like, I'm betting my money on this. I'm betting all my savings this is going to be a VSD, because of the nature of it. I'd heard so many VSDs at this point, and my consultant would not be happy if I hadn't mentioned this is a grade 3/3, a grade 3/6 murmur, best heard in the left parasternal region, no thrills or heaves, or what, if I hadn't described the murmur completely, my attending would just not be happy. To them, it was a failure if I hadn't described a murmur that way. And so now when I heard this murmur, I was just like, yeah, I know this murmur, it's a VSD. Of course you have to echo it, and it could be anything other than a VSD. I'm not that cocky, but I was just like, I bet top dollar this is a VSD, and it was a VSD.
Oh, good.
So I think this sort of stubbornness was very important for my learning, and I really miss that. I do.
Yeah, it makes you a better doctor, doesn't it?
I guess,
because I think all of us. I think stress has a very bad rep. So I completely agree that stress, on the whole, is bad for you. But acute stress in any situation shapes you. And we've talked about this before on a few episodes, but acute stress allows you to sort of rise to the occasion. So I think that's what you're trying to describe, which is great. So how was your first day, your first week, and your first month?
My first day. So fortunately, I had a friend's brother who picked me up from the airport. So then they felt really bad for me, so they took me out to dinner. I had nothing. Like I absolutely had nothing. I wouldn't know what I would have eaten that evening. I would have got takeaway or something, but I knew nothing about the area I was living in. I wouldn't have known where to get takeaway from without having a tummy bug or whatever. So my first day was not too bad, but once I got home, once my friend's brother dropped me off home, I just sat down, and it was like complete silence. My family back home were asleep, so I couldn't speak to them. At this point, I didn't have many friends in the UK, so I couldn't speak to them. And that's when it hit me. I'm all alone here. And so that was my first day. My first day was when I realized, oh God, I am actually very alone. And then from the second day onwards, so I was starting work in sort of 4 or 5 days. So I was at work on the 5th day of my stay in the UK, just because I'd barely left anyway. So then it started. You go to collect your BRP. You start at your occupational health. You do all of these things, and it's non-stop. All of your admin stuff is just one after the other, and it doesn't matter how much time you spend, you're just not going to be able to do it. And on top of that, you've got to get your groceries, you've got to get basic furnishing, you've got to buy notebooks, I guess. do a little bit of learning, do all your statman training, all of that. So it was so overwhelming week number one. So day number one, just because I landed in the evening and there was nothing to do, I felt like I had nothing to do, so lonely. And week one was just like, I've got so much to do and have no time. How am I ever, and when you're back home, you have your parents to help you out, you have friends who can do a few things for you. Here I was just, and shortcuts as well. Like here I didn't know anything. So I didn't know what the easiest way to get to Canterbury was from where I lived. So I would take the hour-long train, I would take the hour-long bus, whereas the train was half the time. So, that sort of thing. Or I didn't know where to buy a good coat from. It was cold in December, and I'd been in the UK in the summer, and I just didn't know where to buy a good warm coat from. I was freezing the first day. I had my cardigans, the 2 cardigans. So that sort of thing. First week was a bit overwhelming. Work was fine. They were clearly very different conditions from what I would see. So in pediatrics, bronchiolitis is a big one here. There's close to no bronchiolitis in India. And when you see a baby with bronchiolitis, you get very excited in India. You send a full viral panel and stuff like that. Or at least that was my experience. And just management of neonatal sepsis or how we attend deliveries was just so completely different. So it took some time to learn a whole new system. But I think my first few months weren't very good. And I think it was marred a bit by, I don't know if this was racism, but this was something, I guess. So very early on my line, and I think this is important for especially doctors from overseas to talk about. I've seen this raised on social media. I know this has happened to a few friends of mine. So the whole curry smell thing. Do you know about that, Sadhana?
Yeah.
So quite early on, I think maybe second month or whatever, I got a deodorant and a note in my tray that said, "Oh, I've heard people talking, and this is for you," as an anonymous note. And when you do the plab, you're taught so much about professionalism, and you're taught so much about how if you have a problem, you first talk to the person and all of that. And here I was reading a note from an anonymous person, feeling like, why did I study so much of professionalism for the PLAB exam? Because clearly no one follows it in the UK. So I had this and I just didn't know how to interpret it. So then I didn't know if this was a racist attack, because where I lived was supposed to be quite, I don't know if it was racist, but there were rumors that it was a more racist place. So I didn't know if was this racist. Did I actually smell? But I didn't think I did, because I love perfume and I'd wear perfume a lot. And but also it was the winter, so when you go to work, you dress up in a jumper, etc. And then sometimes work heating is so high and you're running between A&E and the police department, so you do sweat. So it's just like, do I stink to the extent that someone's had to leave me an anonymous note? Or is this just some kind of nonsense pranks? I just didn't know what to make of it. But of course the big thing was, is this racism? So I escalated it, and turns out people had sort of raised this on the second day of my job, that at this point I was just like, if someone's raised it on the second day of my job, there's no way I actually smelled. Like, this is just some absolute malarkey. And then turns out, then I sort of told it to other people, and then it turns out a lot of people of color in the department were getting asked to put on deodorant. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. And I know a few friends of mine who's been told to, you probably smell, could you put on deodorant? And these are all people who use deodorant. These are not people who don't use deodorant. And as long as someone's not unhygienic, why would you do something that rude to someone? Surely you would be more professional towards them. But that was my experience. And sort of what nailed it was, a few days later, I was with a senior colleague, a senior registrar who was from an ethnic minority group, and we went. It was just the start of the COVID pandemic, and we were going downstairs. And of course, I think there was this worry, because at that point it was just being realized that probably ethnic minority groups have higher mortality rates related with COVID. And we went downstairs, and there was a member of staff who kept telling my registrar, you're delaying care by putting on PPE. And everyone in that room was with full PPE. My registrar, a BAME person, was putting on PPE before going into the room. And there's this person who was like, you need to go in and do an assessment. You're delaying care because there's no aerosol generating procedures. But this was a child who'd come into resus. And, we know resus situations. At that point, the guidance was that you PPE before you. So it was all very hodgepodge. And then eventually this person put on full PPE to come into the room. And then I was just like, okay, something doesn't add up in this place. There is a lot of infighting among groups, and I think they probably like to take it out that way. I don't know what it was, but yeah, that was the worst thing that happened to me, and I like to think I'm not going to get this sort of thing because I put on deodorant. I smell nice. I shower every day. My first paycheck, I got a Dior perfume. My second paycheck, I got a Guerlain. I thought I'm like, why am I being targeted? I'm quite Western. Surely this is for people who are not. And, it came to the realization that no matter who I am, how I dress, how I speak, I'm still an outsider, and people are going to view me as such and make ridiculous, offending gestures towards that. And yeah, I think that was my first month experience. I don't know if I've been quite elegant with this, sorry.
You have, Olivia. That sounds that sounds very hard, to be honest. It must have been really hard to deal with, and
it was.
I don't have many words because it shouldn't have happened, and it's awful. It's absolutely awful for someone to go through that. The fact that you're sort of coming up with explanations, I think you shouldn't, because you don't have to. No one should have to explain anything after such a stunt, because clearly it's an offense on the part of the person who's actually done it rather than the person who's been subjected to it. So yeah, you never should have gone through it. But again, there's lots of people who are going to be listening to this podcast, as we discussed, who don't know how things are, who don't know what's wrong and who don't know what's right. Just like you when you started, just like me when I started. And this is definitely wrong. This is
definitely wrong.
No, you do not take this. Yeah. You do not accept this. Just like Olivia doesn't.
No. So I actually back down quite easy. So you do not accept this. And if someone does something like that to you, you say, I want action taken. And especially if someone tells you, oh, you smell of curry, or you just if someone tells you smell, you just make sure you ask the question of what. And if they tell you smell of curry, that is not okay. Okay. I don't know how to explain this. No one should be telling you put your coats away. No one should be telling you don't wear the same clothes that you wear to cook to work. People smell of cigarettes. People smell of milk. People smell of ham. People smell of fish oil. People smell of what they eat. And as long as someone's not unhygienic, what people smell like is none of anybody's business. And in fact, we had a lady on the ward who, I think she was allergic to deodorant. And for one day, we were told to not wear any deodorant. Whereas, when my incident happened, the ward clerk was telling me, oh, we should really put on deodorant. And I was just like, you're running around the hospital. We're bound to sweat. And she was like, oh, it's not a bit of sweat here and there. It's when someone comes to work smelling bad every day. I was just like, who is smelling these people? And then it was said like, about some of my other...
Just like the temperature at the front door with COVID.
Yeah. So I was like doing a sniff test. And there was rumors about my other colleagues smelling. And these colleagues, I sat next to them for 8 months and none of them smelled. Okay, I will write this down and give it to them on one day. So it was all a bit weird. So if this happens to you, it could potentially be racist. It could not, but it could be racist, and don't back down. And if this happens to you, the employer does not deserve your service. So, and there's lots of people looking for jobs, looking for people to work for them. So yeah, just don't tolerate it. Yes. Yeah.
And you can always reach out. I've referred to the Facebook group multiple times, but there's a very good Facebook group. What is this, like 100,000 members or something like that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, most people are helpful. You can post anonymously. We're all there for support, and we try to help each other whenever we can. I was going to ask you what your biggest challenge was, but I think we've probably talked about that already. Unless there's something else you'd like to mention, but I think this sounds like quite a big challenge when you started.
Yeah, I think that was bad. I think my biggest challenge was not being able to hand over all my patients. So, do you know what I mean? So I've now worked in a system where someone who doesn't know the doctor is not on call overnight. That was my biggest challenge. I was just like, so there's no one who knows about this patient overnight other than the nurses? And they were like, no. And I was just like, so what do I do? She's like, if there's a job, you hand over. Otherwise, you go home and forget about it. I was just like, what? So I think that was my biggest challenge, to like let go of work while not knowing that there was no one else having the full knowledge of my patient. And then, realize that it's probably not necessary and that most patients will be fine overnight. But that was honestly my biggest challenge.
The ability to switch off, basically.
Yeah, the ability to switch off and the ability to understand that not every patient needs 24 hours of a doctor, even if they're inpatient. So, yeah. So, yeah,
Um,
I guess.
yeah, that's quite important, isn't it? Because I think it also changes the more senior you get. So the more experience you have, you realize, what things you can let go of, and the small stresses which you would have had as an F1. I remember the first time, my first on call, it was in Pakistan, it wasn't here. My first ever on call was the best on call you could ever have. I mean, like no calls. It was like a ward on call shift where we used to do 24-hour, 36-hour on calls, and it was you did the day, then you did the night, and you just stayed over, and then the morning, and then do the ward round, etc.,
Yeah,
and then you
yeah.
went home. So 36 hours, and basically, I remember all the seniors saying, you know what, just chill. This is gonna be a great shift. It's fine. No one's gonna call you. I couldn't sleep because I thought, what if they call me and I can't go? Someone will die, and that responsibility is on my shoulders.
Yeah.
So I think it's just the burden of responsibility which initially hits you, and then as you go through your career, you slowly start to dilute. You understand what you're responsible for. You understand that you can't do it all on your own. There are people around you, and everyone's supposed to shoulder the responsibility.
Yeah, and I think not a big challenge, but a big learning was that, nurses are professionals in their own right. They have rigorous training. They identify sick patients. They're able to flag up sick patients. So, they're even if you are doctor, like it's not all on the doctor. I mean, that's not to excuse doctors of anything that they do wrong and saying, "Oh, nurses are responsibility," but they're really good. They will pick up sick patients. They will flag sick patients up to the on-call team. Nurses, HCAs, healthcare assistants. I mean, there's a whole team that's not you, and it is teamwork. And yes, you have to let go and be like, not everything is you. Patients don't die and live because of one person. It's very important to realize that. And that was a big learning when I came to the UK, that I don't have to be in control of everything. There's lots of professionals with great skill, and you know I can be safe in the knowledge that they're all doing their job. So yeah.
Yeah. So we'll move towards a more positive note now. Um, so
So yeah.
whenever we move, whenever we migrate, it's an experience. It's an experience that can have lows, as you've mentioned, and highs.
Yeah.
So what have you learned? What have you learned on your journey so far?
I don't know how. So when I was a child, I had my parents and my godparents looking after me. So very well taken care of. And I had an elder sister, so she used to look after me as well. And then my sister went off to uni, so I was the only child for my parents for many, many years. And then my sister got married. So I've been a very not. I've lived alone before, but very sheltered child with lots of people looking after me, and so I never thought that I could do a lot of things on my own. But after moving to the UK, I take care of the bills. I take care of my bank statements. I do my own food shopping. I do my own cooking, cleaning, all of that. And I realized that I can do all of that with a career. Earlier, I could not think of doing that without the support of my parents or people I lived with. I don't know, but now I've realized that I can actually do it. Um, and just the sense of independence that I think has come with it has been like great learning. Um, so yeah, I think
And
that's what I would say.
it's very satisfying as well, isn't it? Relying on yourself, being able to do all those things. It's very satisfying at times, I feel.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. I think it's great. And I think it helps you. It helps you in life, the ability to juggle a few balls at the same time. So yeah, I think I think it's great.
So, Olivia, you probably know why I'm smiling now because we're going to move on to my personal favorite question, which is the last question. So, what would you tell Olivia in Mumbai when she's thinking of moving to the UK if you could go back
Uh,
in time?
I think what I would tell myself was that if you're having problems, a move of country is not going to solve all your problems. Like going to a different country is not the solution to everything. The solution is inside of you, and it doesn't matter how many countries you move, you still may be. I mean, not an unhappy person, but you may still feel like an unfulfilled person. So I'd say you start looking for the solutions in yourself, and not in another country. As much as it's been great moving to the UK, yeah, I tell Olivia to sort of look for solutions inside and not outside. I guess, yeah.
Amazing. That's very sound advice. So we've got a few minutes left. Let's talk about a couple of things.
Hmm.
What does the future hold?
Um, so I really do want to get involved with more support for international medical graduates, and that's been something that I really want to do. Just because of what my experience was like. When I started on a weekend shift. My registrar just wouldn't come to help me, even though I was told my registrar would help me. It was so completely chaotic. And I mean, in what other profession do you have people who hired from overseas and everyone knows exactly what they know, and put them on their first shift as an unsupervised weekend job, as an executive. I thought that was just so ridiculously, completely unfair. And I think advocating for better inductions, advocating for shadowing periods, advocating for, um, you know, just better supervision or support in the first few days. You don't have to treat international medical graduates special. You just have to treat them like you would treat an employee that you've hired from a completely different system to work in yours. And I can't imagine another job where this would be okay. Why is this okay in medicine? So my whole aim is to hopefully get, and I think there's a lot of chat around this, and I don't know if I'd be the person to do it. I'm sure there'll be someone to do it. Is to get a more sound induction, a more sound um, transition process, and a more sound support process available for international medical graduates in the NHS, especially if we're going to continue to hire from overseas to plug in workforce to support workforce shortages.
Olivia, I
But
think
yeah, I
you're the
don't think I'll do it.
no, Olivia, I think you're the exact person to do it.
uh,
um,
I mean, yeah, I feel strongly about it, but I don't know if I'd actually do it.
this
So
is this
yeah,
is this is the thing, right? So you feel so strongly about something. I genuinely believe because maybe it's easier because I'm literally just pointing the gun on your shoulder. But basically, if you feel so strongly about something, you've got to go for it. You've got to go. What do you stand to lose? What do you stand to lose?
no, yeah, absolutely, no, cool.
But it was amazing chatting to you. I had a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of very important lessons in there for everyone, not just international medical graduates, not just people, doctors from overseas, for everyone. I think, and that's the entire purpose. So as I've said before, if anyone's felt that this has benefited them, our job is done. You're very welcome, by the way, to come on again and help me host some of the episodes. Open offer, very welcome if you'd like to. But it was
Yeah.
excellent talking to you, and I think we're going to end this there.
Oh, perfect. Thanks. It was nice being here, and it was nice sharing the story. Yeah.
Thanks.